how good you can become in a sport may largely be dependent on genetics and luck. How long you're going to live in life may be largely dependent on genetics and luck. But how well you're going to live in the time you have left may be dependent on what you put in your mouth and the diet and lifestyle choices that you make. And so what we're trying to explain to patients is you're not going to live forever. You're going to die. There's been over 100 billion humans, modern humans born on the planet. There's 7.3 or 4 billion alive today, but there's only been 5 well-documented people that will live past 117. So the thing is, you're not going to live forever, but you don't have to spend the average 9.6 years of debility or 17 years in poor health that the average American is spending, giving up, compromising the last decades of life that could be your richest decades of life because of chronic degenerative diseases, because we haven't taken control of our diet, sleep, and exercise patterns. And that's what we're trying to point is you may not be able to live forever, but you can reduce dramatically the years of debility that you have, your vulnerability to infectious disease, your likelihood of developing heart attack, stroke, and other debilitating conditions. That's where the big payoff is. Not living forever, but living well until you die, having a good life and then having a good death.
All right, so how does the fasting come in, though, as a pathway towards that?
So fasting is interesting because you're dealing with people that are oftentimes addicted to the artificial stimulation of dopamine in their brain, whether it's to drugs or dietary issues. Fasting is a great way of breaking that cycle. It can be a very effective way of getting the person to the point where good foods taste good. It's a great way of lowering the blood pressure enough you can eliminate the medications, along with the chronic cough, fatigue, the impotence, and premature death that's associated with them. Normalizing the blood sugar levels so your insulin levels normalize, so you don't have the cravings and the binging and all the other stuff that sometimes go along with it. Or in autoimmune diseases, oftentimes pain is significant, inflammation and swelling. People can't be active. They can't dissipate their tension. They aren't able to engage effectively. And so when you get people out of pain, it's like an epiphany experience. And now the motivation goes up. It's hard to be motivated to make diet and lifestyle changes when you feel like crap all the time. But when you get a taste of feeling good again, it's very motivating. And now oftentimes that's enough motivation to help people overcome their addictions and their tendencies. The reality is I found the most effective patients are those who are most motivated. And motivations that are the most powerful is pain, debility, and fear of death.
Yeah, 100%.
The only problem is, a lot of these people, they get out of pain and they're not fearing death anymore. And then they might slide a little bit because they think I'm better now. I don't have to work quite so hard. So, there's challenges on both sides. But
yeah, it's one thing to talk about intermittent fasting or, a fasting mimicking protocol. It's another thing altogether to talk about a 40-day water fast.
Well,
that is a very extreme
Moses,
thing.
David, Elijah, Jesus, and our patients.
Right.
Do fasting.
It is interesting that fasting is, shows up in all these various religious traditions.
Isn't it interesting? The Jews, the Jains, the Hindus, the Muslims, the Buddhists, the Christians, all of these religions that's diametrically opposed on so many things that are killing each other in the street over disagreements, they have one thing in common, and that's a tradition about fasting. Because fasting changes how you feel about yourself and the world around you. It can't help it. These traditions resonate throughout history. And, the reality is perhaps it's because that's what works.
So you approach fasting from a perspective of weight management and also disease prevention and reversal, but there's also all this emerging science around longevity and anti-aging. Of course, that's Longo's specific lens on this, but by dint of autophagy and all these other biomechanical systems that are affected by fasting, there's now this whole world of research opening up around prolonging life as a result of this.
I actually think the people that are going to turn out to get the most benefit from fasting, this 1 and 2 week fast that we do with healthy people, is healthy people. Healthy people that are looking to stay healthy. For example, to avoid vulnerability to infectious disease, to avoid the problems that, not waiting like my brother did till he has a heart attack, but the people that are willing to use it to prevent the problems from the beginning. And interestingly enough, I've been communicating with Walter Longo recently about doing a joint study where we're going to use his expertise and access and our facility to do some look not just at intermittent fasting, but long-term fasting, and compare and contrast and see what the very best bang for the buck, so to speak of, is in terms of taking healthy people and helping them stay that way. We've got a study that's planned for next year looking specifically at exotic biomarker changes with these dietary changes, with fasting, and then trying to differentiate how much fasting, how frequently, what's the right combination. That's all relatively new territory.